everybody, and welcome to Mix Up Sports Live on this Friday, August 12th. We got a lot of news for you today, but first let me introduce the boys. They'll be joining along with me. To my right, Nick Sexton. To my left, Frank Marchese. Boys, how you guys doing today?
I'm great.
Doing good.
And we're going to start in the Olympics because let's face it, that's where all this stuff has pretty much happened today. And I want to start off with the game that just ended not too long ago in penalties. The U.S. women's national team for soccer put up against the Sweden international team. Ended up going to penalties and did not go the way of the United States team. Uh, Personally, for me, they were down early, but Alex Morgan brought them back to tie it and just could not capitalize on the penalties. And this is not the first time it's happened. This happened, was it 2010's World Cup against Japan? But it happens a lot with the U.S. team. But they can bounce back from it. It's not gonna it's the Olympics. Granted it's just this one match, but I feel like they can bounce back easily from it in further tournaments.
I mean, this game that between the U.S. and Sweden, it was a heartbreaking game for the supporters for U.S., including pretty much obviously anyone from America, and anyone who's watching the game with the U.S. having 27 shots and dominating possession, Sweden scoring on one of its two shots on goal and then winning in penalties. Which, I mean, it's just they beat them on penalties 4-3, which that's just heartbreaking that the USA was just dominating this game the entire way through, and just gave up a goal on a counterattack, and that really cost them. They were coming in as one of the favorites to take home the gold in women's soccer, and unfortunately they got knocked out here in the quarterfinals. So we're gonna have to wait till the next tournament to see how they perform. But it's a tough loss for this whole team.
I mean, of course, it's upsetting to see the U.S. lose here in this tournament. And I mean, they just actually showed it on NBC right now. I mean, Hope Solo just guessed the wrong way on that last penalty. But another thing you got to remember here: this is not a. You're right. This is one of the favorites, but you got to think this team is also coming off a Women's World Cup win. So I mean, it's not like they're a big name team with a lot of potential that hasn't done anything. They just won the World Cup last year, so was it last year or earlier this year?
Last year.
Yeah, so they just won the World Cup last year. So while this is disappointing, you could still hang your hat on that.
Yeah, and actually, correction. I meant to say it was earlier this year, like January, February-ish.
There you go.
So my apologies, but and the funny thing is too that they were the favorites. The odds for the women's national soccer team to win the Olympic gold was 6-5, while Sweden's was 12-1. So that puts you in perspective the amount of power that this team has gone in. But I'm gonna go on a short, tiny rant real quick about Hope Solo, the goalkeeper for United States. She came out after the game and said, "I thought we played a courageous game. I thought we had many opportunities on goal. I think we showed a lot of heart. We came back from a goal down. I'm very proud of this team, and also think we played a bunch of cowards. The best team did not win today. I strongly, firmly believe that." Now, I'm all okay with essentially being strong-hearted and having that passion for your team and the way you play. I don't get mad at that. What I get mad is that the team that was the underdog essentially in this game come out and beat you guys instead of you go understanding what went wrong. And yes, it's a hard-fought win. You go and insult the team by calling them a bunch of cowards. I'm sorry, but that's not any way any athlete in the Olympics nonetheless should be treating other players. It's especially in this format. Yes, the women's national team for soccer is amazing. Like you mentioned, that we won the World Cup. We played amazing in group stage. We won the group stage. But to come out and say that about the team that just beat you, if the best team did not win today, then where were you guys? If you guys are so-called the best team, why didn't you show up? And for me, that's bothersome that someone comes out and insults the team that just beat you. What's your guys' standpoint on that?
I understand. I'm not saying that it was all right what she did, but coming off this game where you were the dominant team, had 25 more shots than Sweden, and then ended up going to penalties and losing. It's obviously going to be very frustrating, considering that it was a frustrating way that Sweden played. Granted, it beat the U.S., but coming from the goalkeeper, who her job is just to stop shots, which obviously didn't go too well in this game, giving up one of the two shots that was taken. It's a frustrating way to lose, and being the favorite and then having this target on your back and losing. You can tell how much passion this team has, and so I understand it coming from if these athletes that are in the Olympics, everyone's watching, and to lose like this in that way, it's going to be frustrating for the team, and you just can't come off like that and let your emotions get the best of you. She could have handled this a whole lot better. There's no excuse to be to show that much of a lack of sportsmanship, but at the same time, you have to keep those things to yourself. You can't go out calling them cowards. You can believe that in your heart if you want, just don't come out and say it. That's my stance on it.
I don't understand how you can call a team a bunch of cowards for beating you, but she's right. The best team did not win today. When you look at when you look at the U.S., 27 shots to 6, possession 64% for the U.S. They had 20 free kicks, 12 corners, six. I mean, but you look at the big one. As I said, 27 shots, only 6 of them on target. You're taking 27 shots. How do you only get 6 of them on target? They had all the chance. They had all the opportunities in the world in this game. Then you say, well, they fought well. She's the reason they lost. Essentially, it all came down to Hope Solo at the end. She's the reason they lost, and she's going to go and call them a bunch of cowards? I don't think so.
And it doesn't necessarily help the fact that she only gave up 1 goal, but the fact that they had only the 2 shots, like you mentioned, Nick. I mean, I don't know if you would say that she played a great game or she played a bad game, because most goalkeepers would be happy just letting in the 1 goal, whereas she let up, you could argue, 50% of the shots taken on goal. But it doesn't also help when you guys are in penalties and one of your star strikers misses. Both of your strikers essentially miss their penalties, with Pugh and Morgan both missing their shots.
It reminds you of Italy-Germany when Germany's best shooters missed and war flashbacks.
But yeah, it's you need the help all you can. You need all the help you can necessarily get. But for her, like I said, they are the best team for females, but to come out and have no class by saying what you said. I mean, Sweden, like I mentioned, was the underdog. You can't fault Sweden for winning, for playing like they did. I mean, granted, they didn't play prolifically, but they did enough to get the win. It's almost essentially the same thing as the most undeserving Euro win in history, with Portugal winning it, and how they did. Granted, this isn't the finals, but the way that Hope Solo has come out, you might as well have said that because of the way Sweden played. But that's not the only thing going on in the Olympics. To go off of real quick, the Olympics basketball for men's, USA specifically, right now they're playing against Serbia. They're winning 9-0 in the first quarter, just starting. But we've seen them this entire Olympics essentially be strong, dominant, up until their game against Australia, where they won 88-98, I believe. And in that game, Carmelo Anthony getting 31 points and passing LeBron James being number 1.
I don't want to hear that name ever.
Oh yeah, and that's right. He did come out and say he called it a successful career if he didn't win a title, because he's got 3 gold medals.
I don't agree with Stephen A. Smith ever, but everything that Stephen A. Smith said this morning, ripping him for saying, how could you possibly sit back and say you had a successful career if you have won 3 gold medals and no NBA titles, is absurd. I agree with Stephen A. Smith completely on that.
Besides the fact, though, it's nice to see USA be as dominant they are. Maybe having that one issue against Australia, but even the first half they were only shooting about 37.5%, but still having a 2 to 4 point lead, and then going out and winning by 10. But it's I'm gonna ask you this year's Olympic squad basketball. Would you guys give it the same amount of skill as it was last Olympics? I mean, personally, for me, I say no because you're missing, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Steph Curry, D Wade. You're missing all these star-studded names, but they're still essentially getting the job done behind guys like Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Melo. So, what's your guys' stand still on that?
This U.S. team is obviously not the caliber of the team that took home the gold these last Olympics. But I mean, with the gap that you have in between the nations, when you have Australia or possibly Australia or Spain or one of those teams that are possibly the second contenders for at this point pretty much the silver medal, possibly the gold medal, but they have maybe 2 or 3 A or B players in the NBA. But the U.S., I mean, their whole team is pretty much better than a lot of the players that are on other teams. They have, I mean, you can go down the list and you'll be hard pressed to find a couple players in the whole Olympic play on other nations that are better than those players. Granted, take away probably Harrison Barnes from that list and you'll be good. But it speaks to the skill gap of the world pretty much when the U.S. winning by 10 against Australia is considered a scare in this tournament. They've been winning. I think the average margin of victory was something along the lines of like nearly 30 or 27 or something like that. It's ridiculous how dominant they are this Olympics, even with the somewhat of a less strong team than the last year. But I mean, they're able to get away with it without LeBron, D Wade, Curry. You mentioned Kobe and all them. They're able to do it, and I mean, I don't see any team that really um, not pose a threat, but I don't see a team that is a favorite other than the U.S. in this whole Olympic play.
When was the last time the U.S. lost a men's basketball Olympics?
I don't know.
A long time ago.
This team, it again, it doesn't matter. Like I think really the only way that any other country in the world will have a chance against a U.S. men's Olympics basketball team would be if they started using college players, which I really think they should start going to, not for the fact of bring the U.S. back to the field a little bit. But I mean, these are NBA players, and I don't usually take this stance, but with the NBA, it's such a star-driven league as far as publicity and how your team performs. If you lose your star player in the NBA, you have major problems. Where if you lose your star player in Major League Baseball, it's a little bit different. The rest of your team can pick up the slack. I honestly would start using college players instead of NBA players in the Olympics for that reason. If my star player gets hurt in the Olympics, I'm sorry, I pay him. I don't want him hurt for a decent part of the season in these Olympics. That, and I think if you do bring college players in, it may keep players in college a little bit longer, help them grow into better players and more NBA ready players coming in, and it keeps asinine comments like Carmelo Anthony's at bay.
For me, I disagree with you, and for the reason being is because it's already a player choice. We've seen LeBron James sit out, we've seen Steph Curry sit out because of not wanting to aggravate injuries. So I still believe that it should be up to the players, and if they're willing to play and as dominant as they are, I think it should be allowed. And your thought of college players,
I understand. No, I understand it. I understand it's a player's choice, but the players are picked by Krzyzewski, and then they get the choice to whether or not they want to play.
Okay, but then it's a player choice. I mean, for college,
it's a player's choice after they get
Anthony Davis
picked.
played when he was a college student. when he was playing. Granted, he was going to the NBA the next season, but he was still
He was drafted
theoretically.
already.
Yeah, but he was just coming off a college
So
season. He
he's an
had
NBA
no.
player. He got
Yeah, but
drafted by the NBA. He's an NBA player.
yeah, but he hadn't played his official game as an NBA player.
It doesn't matter. He's still an
It
NBA player. He got drafted by an NBA team. He's not in college anymore. He's an NBA player.
Nick, your thoughts?
In my opinion, I think it's just stay the same way. If an owner or a coach doesn't want their players to get injured, they can possibly, talk to the player and say, not let him go or something like that. But I mean, the only time that we've seen a major injury happen for with the U.S. was with Paul George, which gladly he's back and in action in the U.S. and in the NBA as well, and on his way to to be one of the best players in the NBA if he's not already. And so I think with this isn't as much of a obviously not as much of a contact sport as the NFL where you got a lot of these freak injuries. I don't think there's as much of a concern in the NBA. There's still a concern, but I think you're willing to take that chance to let these players go out and play to represent their country at the Olympics.
And I'm sitting here watching this game right now, and it's literally it's men playing with children is really all it is. I mean, Serbia can't mount an attack for 5 seconds, let alone stop the U.S. on defense. It's just I didn't see who had the ball, but DeAndre Jordan just had the easiest lay in, the easiest alley oop lay in that he's ever going to get in his life right now.
You want to talk about the USA dominating games? I mean, today Australia just played today, beating China 93-68. I mean, I'm not. It's not as bad as what USA does, but I mean, it's not like
The
USA
U.S. does
has
that every game.
But it's. I'm not disagreeing with you on the fact that USA does it every time. I feel that with the whole college players should be the only ones playing it. I mean, that's why we have U19 leagues. I mean, granted, it's not talked about as much as the NBA players are, but we still have that nonetheless. So I mean, it's when you think of basketball countries, you think of only USA. I don't look and think about, oh yeah, Serbia.
Yeah, but
top
you look
player.
at the Olympics. Most of the Olympics is all amateur athletes.
All amateur athletes.
Except for a majority. A majority of it's amateur athletes. Then you get the basketball, you get soccer and this and that. Then you get all the pros in there from team sports.
Okay, team sports. Yes, some of them are amateur athletes, but most of them are. I disagree with you on, but yes, for team sports, absolutely. But for me at least, I still think it should stay the same way. And real quick, before we go to break, just the medal tallies real quick. USA is still currently leading with 42. They lead in all categories: gold with 16, 12 with silver, and 14 with bronze. Followed by China, down by 6 with a total of 36. Japan in third
I'm not sure if you guys lost him the same way we did, but the United States does hold a medal lead in the Olympics right now. I believe I believe it was at 43. I just had it up for my show. With China currently sitting at second with 36, and Japan sitting in third with 24. We do apologize for that little break. We will be right back after this. Do not go away.
And welcome back to Mixed Up Sports Live. And today we will open this segment with the news that broke just today. Tyrod Taylor signing a 6-year, $92 million extension with the Buffalo Bills. He came on last year. Originally wasn't planned to be the starter for last year, but came onto the scene, had a great year. And for me, he's still very young, and it's a little bit of a pricey contract considering what he's done since it was only 1 year. For me, I'm a little hesitant about giving players big contracts after 1 year. I'd like to see a couple more years, but if he has a great year next year and for years to come, then it's a great decision. If he kind of regresses this year and start to show some of the tendencies that he wasn't a starting quarterback beforehand, then obviously the Bills are going to regret what they did. But personally, for now, what he brings to the Bills. He's got the mobility factor. He's a great quarterback, and still with a lot of promise. I like this. I like this move by the Bills.
Just really quick, I told you guys off air, but just the constant look of confusion on Jim Boeheim's face while he's sitting on that U.S. bench is priceless. But looking at Tyrod Taylor from last year, 14 starts, 20 touchdowns over 6 intercepts, threw for 3,000 yards, completion percentage of 63.7. Add to that 568 yards on the ground. That's a very solid year for a very, very young quarterback. Again, you said I'm a little hesitant on giving quarterbacks big money over 1 year. He's going to make $27.5 million in this upcoming season with this contract. The Jets didn't want to give Fitzpatrick 12. So I mean, it's definitely you show who's careful with their money and who's not. But honestly think with the way he played last year, through 13 starts, he's very careful with the ball, as you saw with the 6 interceptions. But he does have the ability to throw it deep, and with guys like youngsters like Sammy Watkins who can pick him up, definitely, I think it could be a very, very opportune, very good signing for not only the Bills, but for 6 years. This gives him a chance to get paid again later on down the line.
I agree with you guys on the concept of I need more than just 1 year to see how the player is. And essentially, yes, he had a great season like you mentioned, Frankie, but for me, it wasn't enough. I mean, we've seen quarterbacks have good seasons, get paid, and just be absolutely crap afterwards. I mean, no offense, but that's essentially what Joe Flacco is right now. He won the Super Bowl, got paid that huge contract, and then now look at him. He's injured and he's not playing the way he used to be. But I'm not necessarily saying that's going to be the same thing with Tyrod Taylor. You mentioned you got young guys like Sammy Watkins around him. He's still a young quarterback. He can be mobile if he needs to. He's got a good arm. With that being said, I mean either way, it could be a good signing in the future. It could be a bad signing. It's really too early to tell. Let's see what happens come regular season, and I'll give you my answer then as far as how I feel about it then. But overall, just if Buffaloes want to keep him held down, even if it's just for the one as a starter, or if later on the line they want to keep him as a backup for any reason, I see that this is probably a good deal in the Bills' eyes.
With this move, I see Tyrod Taylor possibly, with what he showed promise, and I think he could possibly turn into a franchise quarterback in this league. And so a lot of this, I think, is the Bills paying pretty much to not have to look for another quarterback. They've been looking for quite some time to try and find their quarterback for the future. Haven't had much luck. At one point they had Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's obviously moved on as the journeyman of the NFL, and so they found someone who works with them. They think he can get him to the. They think they can get him to the level of a franchise quarterback. So they're gonna pay him. They've got some money to throw. Maybe obviously we don't know what the negotiations were like between those sides, and a lot of this may be just paying for what could happen down the road. 6 years is a long time for in the NFL as far as a player of his that's so young and still has this much promise and so much potential. I mean, not only has he shown that, but I think he's only around 23, 24, 25. He's been in the league a little bit, but he's finally found his groove, and that's why I said I'm a little hesitant giving players this money, but if they had to just keep him around and possibly they had to get it done before, then all the power to the Bills if this works out. If I'm a Bills fan, I'm happy that we finally got a quarterback that could be for the future. And I mean that's how I look on it, is that this is more of a move for the future, not just a contract for what he did this year, but what he can do in the future with him being so young and the promise he has.
And like I said, with him being as young as he is and getting a 6-year contract, he has the chance to get paid again and even more money next time with that possibility.
Yeah, and I mean, for me at least, he was great last year. I feel like he can try to replicate that. The money a little bit much, but if you can keep him down and possibly make more in the future by seeing what this guy could be, easily as a top 10. I mean, he made the Pro Bowl last year, but we really don't use that to weigh as much on decisions because let's face it, they let everybody into the Pro Bowl. If you have a jersey on, you're in the Pro Bowl. So I mean, I don't know how much more you want to take from him. The Bills essentially hold him down for years to come, and hopefully it works out for the both of them.
And I was looking into this extension a little bit more, and this isn't actually a flat 6 years, 92 million. It's more of
Yeah,
a
there's an
prove it.
option in there.
Yeah, it's more of a prove it deal. It's 9.5 million this year in salary, and then they have an option for the rest of the extension. If they pick it up, then he gets 27.5 million in 2017, and the extension truly begins. So this is, I mean, to me, this is an amazing deal for the Bills. Looking at it further, that they have him locked down for 6 years if he works out. If not, they can say, you know what, you gave us a good year in 2015, but I don't think it's going to happen. And there are with the NFL starting last night with the preseason, there are a lot of quarterbacks we've been looking forward to seeing and seeing how they perform. The main one that was on display last night was for the Eagles, Carson Wentz. Hopefully, they're looking at him to be the next franchise quarterback. And I don't know if you guys saw the game last night in Carson Wentz his time, but it was. I mean, if you're an Eagles fan, it is not a very very good stat line for Carson Wentz last night. He went 12 for 24 for 89 yards and an interception, and watching him play was even worse than those stats suggested. I mean, there were a couple throws that he made that just sailed over the receiver's head. When he wasn't getting pressured, he would make some nice throws. There were a couple throws you're like, okay, this guy could have it, but the majority of those were kind of just like this guy. I mean, you could tell that, I hate to say it, but that he's coming from more of a D2 school than a regular college than a regular D1, in Alabama or anything like that, where he didn't really get tested that much, and that's what I was worried about coming into the season. And I think the Eagles might regret making that huge trade to get Carson Wentz.
I don't think they'll regret it. I think they definitely won't regret it because this is not like this is the guy and this is the only guy that they have. They do still have Sam Bradford, but he did look he looked overwhelmed last night, let's say, with in his first NFL appearance, quote unquote. He did have that pick on a lazy pass up the middle in the red zone. He will definitely turn around. Give him a couple preseason games to get his legs under him. He will not be the starter this year coming out of camp. I think last night definitely proved that. But give him a year or two, maybe he'll blossom into that starter that the Philadelphia Eagles are expecting him to be.
I agree with you both on a certain standpoint. I agree with you, Frankie, on the fact that he won't be the starter, but I agree with Nick on the fact that I feel like the Eagles may regret the trade later on. I just don't feel like Carson. I feel like a doubter already, but that kind of something is already telling me there's something off about him. He started off okay, and then as the night went on, you could see that he wasn't used to it. when he was under pressure, he was making bad throws, hence the interception. But to me, I just don't see him being a starter. I don't see him being a good quarterback in this league. Granted, there's a lot of quarterbacks in this league who are starting and aren't good. Possibly Mark Sanchez, if he starts, Brock Osweiler, same situation. But for me,
Sanchez went 10 for 13 last night.
But I wouldn't say he's a good quarterback in the league. I wouldn't say that by
No,
any
I
stretch
wouldn't
of the
put. No, I definitely wouldn't put him in the top 10. Without a doubt, I wouldn't.
So, but for that reason, I don't see Carson Wentz being a top quarterback in this league. I really don't. And I feel that the Eagles are just trying to get themselves situated. And I feel like Carson Wentz wasn't the answer when they got the draft pick, but they did it anyways. And let's see if they regret it or not.
Coming into this draft, we knew it was somewhat of a weak quarterback pool. We had Jared Goff, who could, he's more of a safer pick. He's going to be a solid quarterback in this league, in my eyes. Might not be a franchise quarterback, might not be an Aaron Rodgers type where he's the best quarterback in the game at some point, but he's going to be a solid quarterback for the Rams. And unfortunately, the history shows that in the NFL, if there are 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round, there's going to be either one or two of them that are going to be busts. There's it's going to be difficult to expect them all to be stars in this league. And so coming off of this draft, probably 2 of them are going to be busts, and I think Jared Goff is the only one that's safe from becoming a bust in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, but like I said, you got to give Wentz a little bit more time. I believe Goff has every chance in the book right now. He's the only quarterback in that system, right? He's the only quarterback in that system that has the ability to start. Hackenberg didn't even play yesterday for the Jets, which if Bryce Petty continues to play like the way he did last night, he could end up being Petty could end up being the number 2, and Hackenberg could actually even be gone. Still very, very early to tell. I mean, for a lot of these young quarterbacks, you're looking at the first preseason game. Some might even get their first chance next week, which I'm expecting. Which I would expect Hackenberg to get his chance next week when the Jets play Washington. But still, it's too early to tell if somebody's going to be a bust or not.
Yeah, I agree with that statement on the fact that it's a little too early. But, I mean, in my eyes, I don't even think that there should be as many preseason games as there are. So, I mean, in this way, if this is the best way to tell a bust, more the power to you. But I don't see it necessarily being the case. But it's, for me at least, these quarterbacks, they really don't have enough time. For me, preseason doesn't really cut it as much as regular season does, because you're playing against that number 1 defense the entire game. You have to adjust to what the defense shows you, whereas preseason you play against 3rd, 4th, possibly even 5th stringers for no reason other than the fact of we got to give some guys experience that they may not get in the regular season, and for that reason I don't see how you can tell if it's a bust or not.
I'm not saying that right after this game I can tell Carson Wentz is going to be a bust. I'm just saying that in general, this quarterback class, there's going to be 1 or 2 that are going to be busts. I'm with preseason, I think a lot of it is just seeing how these guys play from the draft. And if Carson Wentz is looking like that against 2nd or 3rd stringers, I mean, what does that tell you about how he's going to do in the actual regular season? It's going to be interesting. We're going to have to wait a while to officially call someone a bust. In my eyes, it's just not looking that great from what I saw from that small sample size from Carson Wentz. A lot of it was him kind of escaping clean pockets where he just didn't, looked a little jumpy. A lot of throws inaccurate. So, with how this preseason is, we get a look at the new draftees, and obviously we're gonna have to wait till the regular season to call someone a bust. But in my eyes, I think Carson Wentz is not on a good foot from this preseason game.
Well, then again, like all of these young rookies, it's his first NFL experience, and he did not have a good one. He learned today, he learned last night definitely that the NFL moves a lot quicker than Division II college football would, and that in some situations he's got to learn. Sometimes you do have to take a hit. He did take one on a run where he got upended, I believe, in the fourth quarter. Um, got upended and landed pretty hard on his head and shoulder. But you're right. I was looking through the highlights, and he definitely felt pressure that wasn't there. But that's what you get in your first NFL experience when you're coming from a Division II school, and it's going to take him a little time to adjust. He will not see the field this year. Based off of what I saw last night, he will not see the field this year unless Sam Bradford gets hurt.
With the Eagles picking Carson Wentz, they came out and said that he's their second string. They're not going to start him, and he's a project quarterback for sure. So I feel like putting him in his first preseason game already, it was a little dangerous to show that to the Eagles fans, in my opinion, as far as just to see them and really the American media to show him that. I just don't think he's ready for the
Who are you going to
NFL.
put in his place? Who are you going? Well, one, who are you going to put in his place, and two, he's got to play at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it was to for him to come out and do that. A lot of people, including myself, obviously, are doubting him. I understand that you have to put someone there. I just think that that it's going to be a long time before the Eagles can really get excited about Wentz.
Now, my question to you guys is for the Broncos' sake. Based on what you saw last night, do you see Paxton Lynch possibly starting over Sanchez? I mean, last night he went 6 or 7 for 74 yards, averaging over 10 yards per pass with a 110.7 rating, which was 20 over Mark Sanchez, who had 91.5.
Sanchez played more time though.
Okay, to be fair, he did, but based on what we saw, I'm saying, can you take anything from this that would suggest that Paxton Lynch starts over?
He would need to do it again. I think he would need to do it again next week and probably in week 3. As far as Denver is concerned, or as far as I would be concerned if I were running the Broncos, Sanchez is my starting quarterback, but the job is still very much up for grabs. So if Lynch impresses me next week and he impresses me the week after that, then yes, I would put Paxton Lynch as the opening night starter. But right now, I would have to say it's Sanchez based off of the experience factor.
With the Broncos, taking Paxton Lynch late in the first round, in my eyes, they're a division rival for the Chargers, obviously, but I don't understand why everyone's freaking out about the Broncos with their quarterback situation. They have a great defense, and they got off to an undefeated start with Peyton Manning as their quarterback. Granted, saying Peyton Manning, if you're like, oh well, they had Peyton Manning as their quarterback. He was probably one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL last year, throwing in 9 games, 9 touchdowns, and 17 interceptions.
I agree with that, but as far as game management and knowing the game and game IQ, do you think Mark Sanchez or Paxton Lynch are even half as good as Peyton Manning are?
I feel like what Peyton Manning brought with the game management skill, he lost
That's
with the
that
17
won them the Super
interceptions.
Bowl.
That's I'm just saying that it's hard to do worse than how Peyton Manning played last year with a 44 QBR rating. So
Understandable, but he won them a Super Bowl with his game management.
I don't know if it's fair to say that Peyton Manning won the Broncos that Super Bowl. I think it's
The
very
the defense was definitely the major part of it, but Manning got that offense moving early in the Super Bowl, and then the defense held them the rest of the way. You give that Denver defense a little bit of a lead, which is what Peyton did. You give that defense a little bit of a lead, and then they are able to hold on.
you give Paxton Lynch or Mark Sanchez the weapons like Emmanuel Sanders and Demarius Thomas and them. I mean, he might not be obviously he's not going to be the best quarterback in the league, but I think that that throwing Paxton Lynch out there, they get to see what he is. Maybe, maybe not start him first regular season game, maybe go with Mark Sanchez if it's not looking good. try Paxton Lynch, because at this point, I mean, it's that I feel like the defense can take them a long ways, like they did last year with Paxton Lynch and Mark Sanchez at the helm. I think they may not be a Super Bowl contender. I mean, they're going to be a Super Bowl contender, maybe not the favorites, obviously, but I think this team can still go very far, while other teams having them pretty much fall, or while other guys have them pretty much falling off a cliff.
Yeah, it doesn't go well for my whole under on Denver.
No, but for me at least, I wouldn't compare either one of them to Peyton Manning. But then again, Peyton Manning was nowhere where he needed to be. For me, it's Mark Sanchez definitely in the past. And maybe it's just the bad taste that he's left in my mouth over the years of just his play style, and I guess the butt fumble, I guess, kind of still brings back, how bad of a quarterback he was at the time. However, like you, Frankie, it's a little too early for Paxton Lynch to necessarily be the starter. But if he does keep playing like this the preseason, like he has, then again, it's still preseason. I don't know how much you can ride on it. If he plays like that constantly, then he will be the starter for Denver. But with the weapons that they have, I mean, let's face it, any quarterback at this point will just do, because their defense is still amazing, but I don't think they'll be able to replicate the same effect that they had last season as much as they will this season.
That defense definitely lost some big players with Danny Trevathan and Malik Jackson going. But I still think that any team that you have Von Miller on one side, you have a cornerback group that consists of Aqib Talib, Chris Harris Jr., and Bradley Roby. That is a dangerous secondary with T.J. Ward back there. I mean, this team is still set up as a contender, no matter who their quarterback is. In my eyes, they obviously having a better quarterback would boost them into that favorite position. So it will be very interesting to see how this Broncos team plays without a solid quarterback. And one thing more to note before we close this segment of the NFL is that the Buccaneers, they played in that Eagles game, and Roberto Aguayo, the second round pick for the Bucks, which I think we are all still astonished that they spent a second round pick on a kicker. He was 198 of 198 on extra points in his college career, and the first extra point attempt of
Botched
his
his
NFL
first one.
career. Yep, missed it
Atta boy.
straight away. So that I mean, like we mentioned before, this is just the preseason. We'll have to see how he does, but that is definitely not a good start for your first NFL extra point to just botch it like that. It is going to be a rough season for the Bucks if he does not turn out to be the kicker he was at Florida State.
Was it that second kicker for the Jets? He had three goal attempts. He had the one from 23, which he made, and then he had one from 53, which he pushed, and he had one from, I want to say, maybe 35 or 40 that he pushed also. So, great start for him as well.
It's with this is only the second year of the extra points being pushed back. So we'll see how it happens with this year. I think a lot of teams are putting more emphasis on having a good kicker. We saw how that turned out for Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh last year with Josh Scobie with field goals and extra points. The kicker is becoming more valued, which that could be a good idea, but that could be a good thing for the kickers that want to get paid. But with that, Frankie, I believe you have the scores for today. And my bad. I'll do the NFL scores for last night in Thursday, August 11th, the first week of the preseason kicking off. Started with the Falcons beating the Redskins 23-17. Those Eagles beating the Buccaneers 17-9. Ravens beating the Panthers 22-19. The Patriots defeating the Saints 34-22. The Jets beating the Jaguars 17-13, and the Broncos absolutely demolishing the Bears 22-0. And we still have a lot of games coming up in this preseason week 1. Tomorrow we have a couple games at 7:30 Eastern, or at 7 Eastern. We have the Lions going up against the Steelers and the Dolphins going up against the Giants at 7:30 Eastern. The Vikings going up against the Bengals, At 8 Eastern, the Browns versus the Packers, and on Saturday, starting at 4:30 Eastern time, the Seahawks going up against the Chiefs. At 7 Eastern, the Colts against the Bills, and at 8 Eastern, we have two games to end off the night: the Cowboys versus the Rams, and the Chargers versus the Titans. And to close out the first week of the preseason, on Sunday at 7 Eastern, we have the Texans going up against the 49ers.
The New York Mets completely embarrassed themselves last night as we get into yesterday's baseball scores by losing to the Arizona Diamondbacks 9-0. They will continue to embarrass themselves this evening as they begin a 3-game series with San Diego Padres. Speaking of the Padres, they lost yesterday 4-0 after winning 4-0 the night before. The Houston Astros completely put a whipping on the Minnesota Twins, both in Game 1 and Game 2 of the doubleheader. Astros winning Game 1 and 2, 15-7 for Game 1 and 10-2 for Game 2. The Colorado Rockies trailed the Texas Rangers 9-7 in the bottom of the seventh inning, at the top of the seventh inning rather. End up pulling out a 12-9 win in Arlington. The Milwaukee Brewers beating the Atlanta Braves 11-3. Baltimore over Oakland 9-6. The Angels beaten by the Cleveland Indians 14-4. Yankees beat the Red Sox 4-2. The Cubbies beat the Cardinals 4-3 in 11 innings, and the White Sox lose to the reigning defending World Series champion Kansas City Royals.
And today's games include one that's already taken place: the Cubs destroying the Cardinals 13-2. 3 games at 7:05 tonight. The Rays taking on the Yankees for Alex Rodriguez's final game as a Yankee. Reports have come out that there's rumors going on as far as if this is really his last game as a baseball player, or the fact that if he's going to be going to a different team. Rumors are still in the air about that, but we'll see later on. The Braves will be going to Washington, D.C. to take on the Nationals. The Rockies will go to Philadelphia to take on the Phillies. And at 7:07, we have the Astros taking on the Blue Jays. At 7:10, we got 4 games for you. My apologies. Diamondbacks taking on the Red Sox. The Angels going up against the Indians. The Padres going up against the Mets. The battle of you two right there. The White Sox taking on the Marlins. At 8:05, we have the Tigers taking on the Rangers. At 8:10, we have 2 games going on for you. You got the Reds and the Brewers, and the Royals taking on the Twins. At 10:05, we have the Mariners taking on the Athletics. At 10:10, we have the Pirates taking on the Dodgers. And last but not least, at 10:15, the Orioles take on the Dodgers. And with that, you guys, we're going to end today's show. Thank you guys all for joining us here on your Friday. We hope you have a good rest of your weekend. Make sure to tune in Monday for Frank Fired Up at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, at 7 p.m. Eastern. My apologies, 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Frank Fired Up, and at 6 p.m. Mix Up Sports Live. Thank you guys all, and have a good rest of your weekend. See you guys.